Touchdown, Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Rammer, jammer, yellow hammer, come see how we rock this. Alabama fans the best, there's no way you can top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Welcome into The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst of Touchdown Alabama magazine. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube page. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay updated on all of our content. You guys can check out The Process every Tuesday and Thursday right here on our YouTube channel. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. On this episode of The Process, I wanted to take a look at the Tide's current recruiting class in its 2021 recruiting cycle after the Tide landed a commitment from four-star quarterback Jalen Milroe on Monday night. The 2021 class currently stands at 19 commits. And I wanted to take a look at what the future will hold for the Tide in its 2021 recruiting cycle. We look at the number that they want to eventually bring in during this cycle. Also take a look at some key positions the Tide will focus on moving forward here. Just give a complete breakdown of where the Tide's 2021 recruiting class currently stands. I wanted to take a look at that on this episode of The Process. But before I dive deeper into that, I do want to hit you guys with some recruiting updates. As always, keep you guys updated on all of the latest things that are going on when it comes to Alabama football recruiting. So that is what we're going to dive into next. So with that being said, let's get the process started. I wanted to dive into a couple of recruiting updates here today as the Tide's 2021 four-star defensive tackle target Tim Keenan III released a top school list, his final five recently, and included the Tide along with Georgia Tech, and also UAB were included as well. Heading into that August 29th decision for the Birmingham product, I do feel it is a Tide in Georgia battle. Alabama has been involved in Keenan's recruitment for a very long time, offering him in 2019, hosting him multiple times. Since then, we got an opportunity to host Keenan on The Process a couple of episodes back. Be sure to check out that episode of The Process as Keenan dived into the latest in his recruitment at that point, talked about what he was hearing from the Tide's coaching staff as well. Be sure to check out that episode of The Process as he is expected to announce his commitment on August 29th. Another guy the Tide is heavily involved with in his 2021 recruiting class is Terrion Arnold. He is expected to release a top school list on next week. I hinted at him gearing up and getting ready to release a top school list on a couple of episodes back here on The Process, as I got a chance to catch up with Arnold on August 1st. Earlier this month, I got a chance to catch up with the Tallahassee product in Tallahassee. Talked about some of the teams that he was hearing from. Be sure to pick up your subscription to touchdowналabama.com so you can check out the interview I did with the Tallahassee product as well. But he talked about a couple of teams that are really pushing for him hard. I think those teams will be included in the top school list they will release very soon here. So stay tuned to touchdowналabama.com, and we will keep you guys updated on the latest when it comes to Terrion Arnold's recruitment as far as the Tide is concerned here. Those are the recruiting updates I wanted to provide you guys with, as the Tide has just picked up 3 commitments in recent days. So I wanted to take a look at the status of the Tide's 2021 recruiting class as they continue to move forward here. Looking at the Tide's 2021 recruiting class, they currently have 19 2021 recruits verbally committed, and I wanted to start my discussion when discussing the state of the Tide's 2021 recruiting class off by talking about the positions where the Tide are basically done with in the 2021 recruiting cycle. They may add another guy here or there, but they are basically done with these positions, are at the tail end when you basically look at their recruiting efforts at these particular positions. And the first position I wanted to talk about is the quarterback position. They grabbed a verbal commitment from Jalen Milroe on Monday. I think he will be their only quarterback in this 2021 recruiting cycle. Of course, if he decommitted, they want to add at least one quarterback in each recruiting cycle. So I think Jalen Milroe is their guy for this recruiting cycle in the 2021 recruiting class. Looking at the wide receiver position, I think the Tide is basically done. Looking at them having commitments from some talented wide outs. Looking at Christian Leary, AJ Hall, and Ja'Cory Brooks. Of course, they are still recruiting several other wide receiver targets. We look at Brian Thomas Jr., the 4-star wide receiver out of Louisiana. I think the Tide adding on a guy like Thomas is a luxury at this point. If they miss out on all of the other wide receiver targets that they are targeting, I think they will be in a great position with commitments and signatures from Christian Leary, Ja'Cory Brooks, and also AJ Hall. Also looking at the offensive line position, it's basically the same situation. They currently have 4 offensive linemen verbally committed. Looking at the Brockermeyer twins, J.C. Latham, also Terrence Ferguson, the 4-star offensive lineman out of Georgia. They want to add on, they could, it's basically a luxury, as I said, add on another offensive lineman in this 2021 recruiting class. They are in contact with a couple of guys, two of their top guys at this moment. Of course, 5-star offensive lineman Amarius Mims out of Georgia, along with 3-star offensive lineman William Griffin Parker out of Tennessee. Both of those guys have a commitment date set. Of course, Amarius Mims' commitment date is set for October, and William Griffin Parker will announce his commitment on September 4th. I also caught up with William Griffin Parker recently. He talked about what he was hearing from the Tide's coaching staff, gave his thoughts on the Tide's current offensive line class as well. I will drop the link to that article in the description of this video. Be sure to check out that article. It is a subscriber only article, so be sure to pick up your subscription, touchdownalabama.com on today. Only $5.95 at this moment. You'll be able to read all of our subscriber only content, like that story on William Griffin Parker. But looking at another position where the Tide is basically finished with here in this 2021 recruiting class, you have to look at the linebacker position. They have commitments from several linebackers. When you look at the inside linebacker position, guys who are expected to play there, you have commitments from 4-star linebacker Kendrick Blackshear, 4-star linebacker Deontay Lawson, and also 4-star linebacker Ian Jackson, who could quite possibly grow into an inside linebacker at the next level. At the outside linebacker position, you have a couple of guys who could possibly play there, including Ian Jackson, as he could quite possibly be an outside linebacker at the next level as well. Looking at Dallas Turner, another impressive edge rusher who could quite possibly fit that outside linebacker role as well. So I think the Tide is basically done with linebackers. Of course, still have a couple of targets still on the board to pay attention to, including Xavier Story, the linebacker, who will play his senior season at IMG Academy. They also have an offer on the table for an in-state product, Jeremiah Williams, a 4-star outside linebacker who could quite possibly play inside linebacker as well, out of Birmingham, Alabama. But for the most part, the Tide is basically done with those positions. The main core of those position groups are basically intact for the Tide here in the 2021 recruiting class. Take a look at the position where the Tide needs a guy, where it kind of is a question mark or who they will take here. You look at the tight end position. That is the position that I am referring to. Of course, the Tide does not have a tight end commitment at this very moment. They landed a tight end in the 2020 recruiting class, and Caden Clark, who actually will not play for the Tide this upcoming season. He took a gray shirt, so he will not enroll until January. So he basically will be a part of the 2021 recruiting class. So the Tide wants to add at least on 1 tight end, so they basically will bring in 2 tight ends in this 2021 recruiting class. Of course, Robbie Ouzts is a guy to pay attention to. He does have an offer from the Tide. He has visited Tuscaloosa recently, as far as being one of the more recent guys to visit Tuscaloosa, as recruits have been banned from taking visits where they get to have in-person contact with college coaches. So Robbie Ouzts did visit Tuscaloosa recently, showing they had some interest in the Tide. Also looking at Jalen Sheed, 3-star tight end out of Olive Branch High School in Olive Branch, Mississippi. Those are the 2 guys that I'll pay attention to. Jalen Sheed commitment is coming up shortly, as his next step in his recruitment is to release a commitment, as he has a top 3 and the Tide is included. The next step in this recruitment is to announce a commitment. So Jalen Sheed could be that guy, but the Tide needs a tight end. They have missed out on tight ends over the last couple of recruiting cycles here. A dominant receiving tight end, especially a more athletic tight end. Jalen Sheed could possibly be that guy, although he is more of an inline traditional tight end. But The Tides coaching staff will continue to try to pull in one of those athletic tight ends in the future, but I think Jalen Sheed and Robert Woods are the two guys to pay attention to. Now you dive into the more intriguing positions for the Alabama Crimson Tide moving forward in this 2021 recruiting cycle, and those position groups are the defensive line and the defensive back position. The Tide currently has 4 defensive backs verbally committed. When you look at the JUCO defensive back prospect Kyrie Jackson announcing his commitment to the Tide on last weekend. Also, the Tide having verbal commitments from 3-star athlete Kadarius Callaway, 4-star defensive backs Devontae Smith and Kane Williams. The Tide is still recruiting multiple defensive backs, including 5-star athlete Quincy McKinstry. I know we hear about him a lot as far as him saying that his decision could come at any time, and I think he is going to stand by that. You guys can check out our last interview with Quincy McKinstry on touchdownalabama.com. Pick up that subscription. It is a subscriber only video, but be sure to pick up that subscription so you can check out the latest on Quincy McKinstry and the Tides push for him, as they have offered him in both sports, football and basketball, the same offer that they have given another defensive back target and the guy I talked about earlier, Terrion Arnold, who is expected to announce his top school list soon. Tide is still in contact with this defensive back prospect. Quincy McKinstry and Terrion Arnold are 2 of the Tide's top targets moving forward. If they can land both guys, I'm pretty sure they will be happy to land on both guys. Another guy to pay attention to here is Kamari Lassiter, 4-star defensive back out of American Christian Academy in Tuscaloosa, right out of the Tide's backyard. They are still in contact with him. He was expected to announce his commitment before his senior season, but he was not ready. He told me that he was looking at announcing a commitment in a couple of weeks. A couple of teams were pushing for him hard, but I think once he said that he was announcing his commitment, which is what tends to happen a lot of times, a guy will come out and say, "Yo, I am thinking about announcing my commitment." Guys like me put out a story about it. Coaches see it and they pick up their push to let recruits know that, yo, you are still one of our top targets. I think that is what happened when it comes to Kamari Lassiter's recruitment. So Kamari Lassiter is still on the board. I think the Tide are still in play for his recruitment as well. But moving forward, when you look at the defensive line position, another intriguing position here for the Tide in 2021 recruiting class. Of course, they have verbal commitments from 4-star defensive end Montgomery Goodwine, 5-star defensive tackle David Payne, 3-star defensive tackle and Quint Barnes. So they have a great defensive line group coming together here in this 2021 recruiting class. But they also have several targets still on the board, including 4-star defensive end Shamrick Jackson out of Orlando, Florida, by the way of Boone High School. The Tide have continued to push for him throughout his recruitment. We got a chance to catch up with Jackson a couple of episodes back on the process as well. Be sure to check out all of those episodes I am referring to check out the guys that I am talking about here on this episode. But the Tide is involved in Shamrick Jackson's recruitment. Also looking at Shamar Turner, a 4-star defensive end out of Texas, another Texas product, as the Tide is cleaning up in the state of Texas, led by their special teams coordinator and Texas area recruiter Jeff Banks. Another defensive end target to pay attention to is Thomas Adilier, especially with the Tide picking up Jalen Miro, the 4-star quarterback, on Monday, who is the former teammate of Thomas Adilier. As Adilier was expected to play his senior season at IMG Academy, he is actually not playing as he is opting out for the football season here. But Adilier and Miro do have a well-established relationship. For a matter of fact, once Miro announced his commitment to the Tide, Adilier came out and said that they make and pursue their dream of possibly playing at the same school once Miro announced his commitment. So that is something to pay attention to, especially with Adilier showing heavy interest in the Tide in the past, saying that they were at the top of his recruitment. They solidified their position after a visit. They have stayed in contact with them continuously. He told me recently that they were in contact with them almost every day, even when he was committed to the Ohio State Buckeyes. So there's a lot there. Thomas Adilier is definitely a name to pay attention to here when it comes to Tide defensive lineman targets. Also defensive tackle, 4-star defensive tackle Tim Keenan III out of Ramsey High School in Birmingham, Alabama, is another guy to pay attention to here. But as I continue to roll off names, I think we have entered the end game, sort of, when it comes to the Tide's 2021 recruiting efforts, as they currently have 19 commitments. In this starting, it is basically crunch time in terms of the 2021 recruiting class, in terms of how many guys that they can take. who is a take and who is a guy that they may want to miss out on, or a guy who they cannot miss out on. They will hold on to the very end and see if they can quite possibly pull him in. I think they will add at the range of 25, 26, 27, in that range when it comes to how many guys they bring in 2021 recruiting class. Of course, you never know with Nick Saban and the transfer portal. You never know what may open up down the line, but that is the number that I am going with for this episode of The Process. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube page. Be sure to hit that subscribe button before you leave. Then head over to touchdownalabama.com. Pick up a subscription. With that subscription, you will be able to read all of our subscriber-only articles. Get your hands on our yearly print magazine issue. Also get a chance to read our in-depth scouting reports when it comes to each of the Tides commits in each recruiting class. Also get a chance to read our in-depth draft projections when it comes to the Tide players who are currently eligible to declare for the NFL draft. Be sure to pick up that subscription. Then head over to your app store, whether that is the Google App Store or the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Be sure to download the Touchdown Alabama app to your mobile device so you can stay updated on all of your Alabama football recruiting news. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama magazine.